Hello and a very warm welcome to this episode of Turnkey and Trimmings. This is episode 6 in our podcast series. And this episode, I've got our CEO, David Cook, in the studio with me. How are you, David?
I'm absolutely fabulous. Nice to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. It's been a while, so I'm glad to have this opportunity. And today we're going to be having a bit of a chat about behind the scenes, I suppose. We often talk about technology and what's happening in the industry and all these kind of things that we do day in, day out. But today we thought we'd have a conversation about the process of even thinking about purchasing a villa and turning it into your dream home, as it were. But in order to do that, where do we start? There's a blank canvas. Maybe somebody's not even bought their place yet. How do you go about, I suppose, envisioning that big dream? Where do you get?
I would say budgeting.
Okay.
Because but buying a property in Dubai is not a cheap process. You got the sticker price that you see on the property platforms, but then you've got all of the other ancillary charges as well. You've got your mortgage fee if you're a mortgage buyer, you've got your valuation fee, you've got your Dubai land apartment fee, the broker fee, all of that. So in the majority of instances, the down payment is 20 to 30%. You really should be adding another 6% on top in order to be able to complete on that property. So once you've actually figured out what that value is, then have a look at what you have left over and how realistic is it to undertake what is likely to be a full renovation with that budget. And that pretty much paves the way for your renovation. What we've seen in the past, a lot of families that move into villas, by the time they've actually gone through the property and the title deeds in hand, they don't have enough money to be able to do the ground floor, first floor, and outside. And rather than compromise, they generally tend to pick the ground floor first. They'll do a full year of, the ground floor looking fabulous because that's what everybody sees. And then next summer, when they leave for the summer, they'll do the outside. They'll save a bit more money. The summer after, they then do the upstairs. I think the challenge comes with understanding just how much renovations cost.
So I was just about to come back to this in terms of this. How do you, let's say again, new to the region, first time buying a house here, it's more expensive than it looks initially.
Yeah.
How do I budget for renovating? How do I even get an idea? Because we see it a lot, people come with a certain expectation, and then when we had a conversation, they go, oh, that's a lot more than I thought it was going to be. How do they get a realistic expectation at the beginning?
So, that's a great question, because if they haven't yet bought a property, it's hard to know actually what needs doing. Because a lot of the properties that are, that reach the market, the current owner may have upgraded the kitchen and the bathroom, for example. So that might not be something, you might love the kitchen and the bathroom that's being put in, and so you get to scratch that off the list. But if you were looking at essentially buying the worst house in the best area, for lack of a better phrase. So, if you take a Meadows or a Lakes 4 or 5 bed, that is completely stock. So it's the original towers from 15 years ago, the original bathroom from 15 years ago. When people talk about a full renovation, there's a lot of things that they don't take into consideration. They just think about the things that you can see inside the villa. There's a whole boatload of things that get missed. So for example, all of the AC machines, all of the water heaters, the windows and doors. So that's often missed. Also the reconfiguration, if you're taking down a wall or you're planning to put a wall up, is the relocation of the electrical and the plumbing. But the one thing that seems to be causing the biggest drain, shall we say, on budgets is actually the additional fees that you have to pay developers if you're extending. Because the crazy thing is, you might buy a property today, and the developer will say, okay, we will charge you 1,000 dirhams for every square foot that you want to put on top of your property. So then you engage with an architect, you do all the drawings, etc., and then you submit. Now that process, if it's 6, 8, 10 weeks, the piece could have changed, and it's now 2,500 dirhams per square foot. Now all of a sudden, if you want to put a 1,000 square foot extra on your property, it's just gone up a significant amount of money. We've seen it all too recently with. I'm actually not going to name the developers. You could argue. But then you're probably watching this been here for a while. You know who they are. So it just seems like it's a never. The goalposts keep moving. Just when you think that you've got enough, sometimes something will creep in, and a lot of the time it is genuinely out of the contractor's control. If the unfortunately, and I guess for good reason, also unfortunately, contractors have a very bad rap. Clients are very, very cautious. Clients approach a renovation project with the mindset, this contractor is out to, do me over. You do me over, hoodwink me, or, whatever it is. That isn't the case in a lot of instances. What the contractor ends up having to bill for are the things that he or she can't see. Or the things that, for again, the whole approval side of things, because you've got the fee for every square foot that you're planning to build up, and then you've got the submission fees and everything else that comes with it. And also, shipping, cost of materials, steel. The rate that you get today, you might sit on it for 30 days, they might deliver it back and forth. When it comes to actually procuring those items or purchasing those items, one thing that, Donald Trump says can completely change, any shipping costs and the cost of any metals, etc. is tough.
Yeah, it is. And is there a number, a percentage, when you're budgeting, just add on, just, like this, hey, or whatever it is, just double it because you're going to need it. But is there an average? Say, look, you're going to have to, this is the amount for purchasing, these are the amount of the fees for purchasing, this is the square foot cost for your renovation, so it shouldn't amount to about this, and then add on X percent. Is there an average, or it's just too dependent on variables out of your control?
So, I mean, a good number would be again, it's going to come down to building a matrix. So ignore, 40, 50, 60 page VOQs for a second. Just build a one-page matrix where you have the section of the renovation. So, for example, preliminaries, demolition, MEP, HVAC, flooring, kitchen, bathrooms, and then put the value in there. Whatever the bad price that comes out at the bottom, add 15% to that.
Okay.
That will exclude authority fees. So authority fees would be in addition. That's typically what, like, for example, our fit out cost calculator on the website. If you go to there, you put in the square footage of the villa, you say low to medium spec, for example, including calls and landscape, and then you click go, the number that you get will be directly related to the data that's been put in there, and it's pulled from 3.5 years worth of VOQ data now, so that will be accurate. But even that is going to be littered with caveats. The best thing to do would be to reach out to us, let us go and see the property, let us actually create a high-level budget with our 50% contingency, and at least then what you're going to be in for. Again, that would be excluding whatever the extension fees may be with the developers.
So let's say we've managed to figure out the budgeting side of things, kind of, at least to a degree that we're happy with the number that's come out and what we're expected to pay. What comes next? Because we often get people coming through the doors, as it were, who think they are looking for an interior designer as the first thing. They've got an idea, they've got their Pinterest board, and they've got this vision of what they want. They think they need an interior designer. Then they come through, they start discussing how much that's going to cost, and they realize, oh, I don't think I do need a particular designer, because they're going to take up the whole budget. Where does they actually start when it comes to the process of budgets aside? What do we do next?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a tough one. So as far as the next steps, number one, if once you've got the budget, you tally that up and you have a look at what its purchase costs are. If you believe that this property is for you and you can afford everything, obviously you then need to put the offer and get it accepted and get the property in the area. We're going to need the CAD files, which are the DWG files, which are the original drawings of the property, so that we can, do the dimensions, make the adjustments and everything else. From that point, it's validating the high-level proposal or the high-level quotes, I guess, that they were issued first time around. Is validating it, just making sure that, those numbers are still valid.
Yeah.
But then we need to translate each one of those things into the renovation era. And whilst we're going through the purchase process, we can actually start working on the layouts and there's the 3Ds, the materials and everything else, just to make sure that we're making the best use of time. You've raised a valid point about interior designers. So interior designers are largely incredibly good at their craft. Is it the most time efficient way of doing things? Often not. There's the reason why I say that before the interior designers get bananas. The reason why I say that is because in our experience, a lot of the people that are purchasing these villas are end users. They're currently typically in a rented property and they're going to get out by X date. Now, if they have the luxury of time, 100%, and you've got the budget, let's go, interior designer, let you really nail each room, understand what products, what brands, what models, all that kind of stuff. But that process can be anywhere between, I guess, 8 to 12 weeks to get you through to the point of detailed design. And then, you can hand that essentially to the contractor and then they know what they price it for and what they're going to be doing. The alternative angle would be to create a design concept or pre-concept, which, to be honest, the majority of our clients kind of have one anyway. They've been on Pinterest and they've been on Love That Design and they found villas that have the perfect garden and the perfect pool and the perfect kitchen and whatever else it is. Put all of those in a big presentation, and we can actually work with them to do the space planning of what the ground floor and the first floor and how the garden could be laid out. And then we create essentially what is a Tesla pack to issue to design build companies. Now, design build companies, a lot of them have very strong design teams and architects. Some of them have not as strong design teams, not architects. But ultimately, if they've got a strong brief to follow, it's actually quite difficult to get it wrong. I'm a huge advocate for design and build, so grouping them together if you have the right company. The reason being is that these companies will typically design within the constraints of the villa, and they will design based on all of the parameters that are given to them, which would be potentially time constraints, potentially budgetary constraints, potentially constraints of the maximum build period if you're going for extensions. And so generally, not always, but generally, design and build is quicker. Generally, it can be more cost effective because you don't have these separate design charges. And also, as well as that, there's no blame game. Well, these are the drawings I was given, and that's what I priced. Variation, it's one point of contact and one company. But the process, would be creating your own brief so that whoever's looking or speaking to you understand the design direction. Issue the CAD files. We're happy to draft some scope of works. We could put everything in one document or one folder and, essentially undergo a high-level tender for the D&B scope. And it's pretty quick. Just have to give it a wiggle.
So you mentioned two things that were to come back to, which one was timelines. And it's, it's one of the underpinning factors for why Contractors.Direct exists in terms of so many horror stories that have, we've heard of, been experienced to of it cost way more than I anticipated or budgeted for. And it was way over time. I know I was expecting to be in July and here we are in November and we're still months away from getting it. How do we mitigate that when it comes to the initial planning phase? And then the other thing is variations, we could come back to, because that's, again, something that's very, that's one of those subjects that the client hates. Yeah, and the contractors, but hang on.
And it almost always crops up.
Yeah, exactly. So first of all, in terms of timelines, how do we mitigate that? How does that say that this is a realistic timeline, and how does that get explained and accepted by the client? It's like, I've got a very fixed timeline. How to explain the reality of physics, I suppose. Yes, what's possible.
So first of all, we can't bear time. So setting very clear. So once you actually understand what the project actually is, giving the contractor the freedom to actually create a workable and achievable program, and having it sense checked by someone like us. So I think one of the mistakes that clients often make is when they're dating contractors before they've appointed, they say, it's really important that we're in 4 months. So, of course, the contractor is then going to create a program where it finishes in 4 months, knowing full well that this is a 6 to 8 month project. So that's issue number one. So go through the full scope. Let the contractor tell you how long it's going to take, and then hold the contractor responsible for hitting each one of those milestones that are in the program. But obviously, that program needs to be achievable. So sense check those programs every single time. Often what seems to work is delay penalties. Sorry, contractors, but delay penalties. So if a contractor is willing to put their money where their mouth is and sign to say, yeah, I can definitely deliver this in this time. Okay, fine. Well, you won't mind a 2,000 dirham a day penalty for every day that you're late. Oh, let me just, you just check that. Yeah. So it's, it's just making sure, because it needs to be fair for everybody. Go back to the budget then. If, in the scenario I gave you, so this family, they're renting somewhere, this is their first property, they've got to be out in 6 months. If it's not finished in 6 months, they need to go somewhere else. So it's unlikely they're going to be able to extend where they are, because the landlord will have already leased it out to the incoming family. So they need to go to a hotel or a Airbnb, which is usually more expensive. That starts chipping away at the budget. So what was the original question?
How do we make sure that the timeline is
yeah.
So I mean, the delay penalties. It's top one.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's an absolute corker. The only thing I would say about delay penalties is, if just the project in general, guys, if anybody watching this is planning to do a renovation, get everything sense checked before you sign the documents. Get everything sense checked by a professional. Let them go through the scope of works and go through the BOQ. Understand, is everything that is needed for the project actually in the country? If it's not in the country, check the procurement schedule to see when they're actually going to be ordering it and when it's going to be in the country, and how does that fit into the program. Because in a lot of instances, one thing could delay the entire project. And it might seem like a seemingly small thing. But if, for example, you can't close all of the ceilings because, something is, you wait for something to be imported, well, then that's actually going to delay quite a few other things as well. And contractors will use that as an excuse for an extension of time. But just get everything sense checked and signed off by someone who knows more about projects than what you do, because even just the timeline, just speaking to the contractor and just saying, right, okay, you've allowed, 4 weeks for approvals. Okay, that's cool. That's sensible, providing obviously there's no extensions. Why do you stop in demolition at 6 weeks? Why aren't you applying for a permit to restart in week 3? You don't know. Now all of a sudden, instead of this being a 6-month project, you could probably shave a couple of weeks off, or the contractor's now got an extra 2 weeks to finish. There's lots of ways that you can de-risk your project. Going into a project blind and just trusting what the contractor says is very dangerous. For us to check the VOQs, scope of works, drawings, all that kind of stuff. Was it 2 hours work? Maybe 3, depending on how big the project is. But by the end of it, there's a report that says, check this, this is missing, this is missing. I don't think that's achievable. Obviously I'm paraphrasing here. It's a lot more detailed and professional than that. But at least you're going to play a picture there.
Yeah, and it really makes sense. And I suppose the question then is, how he says something is that have somebody that knows more about it than you do look at it. But in my experience, especially, most people think they know more about it than they do, and don't want to be told that they don't. Even to the point of, I'm pretty sure I can handle this and I can manage this whole thing. I'm pretty switched on, so I think I could read what they've sent through to me. how do we convince somebody that, you know what, it's worth doing? And again, I'm trying to ask the question without saying, oh, because we can do that for you. But it's that ego question of, oh no, I think I know. And until I get burned, then I realize, oh, I didn't know, but now it's cost me X 100,000 euros experience. How do we stop that from happening?
I don't think we can, right, is the bottom line, because what was it? Maybe about a month ago, sizable project. The client said, hey, can you just help me understand which contractors I should be speaking to, etc. Made the introduction. We opened the topic about project management. And as she said, oh, no, it's okay. My brother's an architect. I was like, okay, is he a project manager as well, or is he just an architect? She was like, no, he's an architect. He's done lots of these projects. Right, okay. As an architect or as a project manager? No, but he's an architect. He knows what he's talking about. No, right, okay, fine. That's cool. But let me just help you understand what a project manager actually does. It's not a case of following, the program and just ticking boxes as you go along. You actually need to understand how things are built, and I don't mean structurally built. That's one thing, but, all of the layers that come with a successful renovation. Right away from taking it back to the slab, to then the MEP, to the framing, the gypsum, taking the joint in, all of the DB, all that kind of stuff. Like if you look at the PMs that we work with, they are all ex-contractor side, deliberately, because it was important that these guys aren't just there to tick boxes and follow a process. Because what happens if a process falls down? All they're going to do is send an email and say, delay notification, contract is in default program. That doesn't solve an issue. What you need to be able to do is go to site and actually see something in real time. And if it's not being done correctly, stop them. Get the site engineer or the project manager on the contractor site and say, he's doing it incorrectly. He needs to use best practice. He needs to take his sandals off and put his steelies on, take his cap off and stick the hard up, whatever it is, That is super, super important. Because without it, you don't really have a property that is then built with longevity, and robustness in mind. And often that's how, if, say for argument's sake, someone's undertaken a 4,000 square foot villa renovation inside and out. If you've got a price that is 2 million, 2 million, 2 million, 1.4, I would be really, really interested. Well, we had the exercise last Thursday or Friday where someone used Contractors.Direct, and it was actually for an office edge. And the contractors we put them in touch with, I think it was 840, 825, 850. And then their own contractor was, I think, 580,000. And he was like, oh, your guys are super expensive. I was like, right, first of all, they're not my guys. But I guarantee you that this will be a fully comprehensive proposal. So I said, look, with great respect, send in that proposal. So I went through the BOQ and then called him back. And I said, can you please just tell me one of the 3 main priorities for this particular office? Privacy, value for money, comfort. I said, right, okay, great. So let me tell you all of the things that these 3 that we recommended have included, that this one has it. So it was sealed glazing systems, attenuators to stop sound transfer, but basically it's just like a list of 14 or 15 different things. So I said, if you want to compare apples for apples, I've taken the cost of all of these from the other BOQs, I've added to this. They're now at 810 as well. So you choose. Yeah. Are these guys really expensive, or are they fairly priced considering how comprehensive their proposal was, because they actually listened? Yeah. So he was like, okay, fine. So which one of these 3 should I work with? I'm not making that decision, buddy. That's your choice.
But then there's that feeds, I suppose, nicely into this, come back to it, the idea of variations, because this happens a lot where the client has got their own contractor, that situation unfolds, and like you the guys you could introduce to are super expensive. And until we highlighted the difference, if we're given the opportunity to do so, then they're like, okay, that makes sense, so then we choose. But what about in the scenarios where they're like, no, your guys are just expensive, our guys, but the people we've introduced you to are expensive, I'm going to pick my guy. What is a variation, and why does this happen in terms of they'd not quoted it properly in the first place?
Yeah.
the client chooses them because they're the cheapest option, because they believe that they quoted for what they asked for. Off they go into the project, and of course it becomes very apparent very quickly, hang on a minute, yeah, those are my three priorities. Even I, as maybe an untrained professional, can look around and say, this is not going to cut them up those things.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the conversation happens with the contract, and they go, well, that was in the initial signed brief. Variation. What is that? Why does it happen? And again, how do we mitigate that scenario as much as possible?
So variations, I guess, come in usually one of three instances. So instance number one, which is probably the most common, client signs off on the layouts, they sign off on the materials, they sign off on everything, and then procurement starts. As the walls start to go up, the client comes for a sidewalk around every week. They stand in this room. They're like, this is smaller than I thought. But it's 4 meters wide. This is as per the plans. The furniture's going to fit. No, the furniture definitely fits. Look, it's, and you show them on the plan. And they're like, we need another meter. Just push this another meter. Like, right, okay, well, next door that room is going to be shrunk by a meter. And they're like, I don't know what to do. So in that instance where it's client induced, that can often be where there is a legitimate variation claim from the contractor. So that's number one, when the client changes their mind. Number two is where during the tender phase, if the contractor has identified that the client really doesn't know what they're looking at, so they don't have anybody like us to represent them, they would be thinking, right, okay, in order to achieve the client's budget, I'm going to not include this, and I'm going to put a provisional sum in there. And also I'm going to, and this is an example of the one under the road, I'm going to exclude firefighting as a line item. I'm just going to put plus 15% coordination management, but it hasn't been added to the total. And so that looks like the uncontracted has reached the client's budget. But the client hasn't seen any of the materials or anything like that. Or maybe, even worse, they sign off on a product that looks fantastic. And then the contractor goes and procures a product from a very famous place. Yeah, large place from Asia. 50 kilometers down the road. Yeah. That looks 95%, selling but a fraction of the price. So what happens is, during the build, the contractor will either continue and leave those things out if achieving the completion certificate is still possible. But what happens is, once the client has moved in, they're like, I thought we talked about this. Man, I'm having a conversation in the meeting room and the guys outside can hear us. Or why is it that everybody in this open plan area, it sounds like a chicken farm, Acoustics are super, super important, especially in office environments, in homes as well. And so you then have to, after you've moved in, retrofit these things. That is a pain in the butt. Do you know how much dust comes out of cutting gypsum and replacing water heaters and all the other stuff that comes with it? It's a lot of dust. Yep. And if you've just moved, the last thing you want is 5 or 6 contractors in your house, banging, cutting, chipping, and then all the rest of it. So that's the second one, where the contractor kind of like leaves it out, but the project gets finished, and then they have to come in after and sort. The third one is where, for example, they provisional subs, or they just deliberately leave things out, knowing that those things are absolutely required for your site. So an example of that would be if you leave out glazing, for example. So an initial conversation with the client would be, I need to change all windows and doors. And then during, the value engineering, contractor removes the windows and doors. And it's like, right, okay, we fit your budget. Oh, fit the budget? Yeah. What are the changes? Not much. Just sign here, we need to get started. So they sign it. And then, partway through the project, they're like, why have we still got those old yellow UPVC windows in? Oh, we had to remove them. Remove them what? What do you mean? Well, in order to hit the budget. I still need them.
Yeah.
You guys like, dude, that was not doing. Yeah, exactly. Or even, things like, and this happens all the time. in every bathroom and kitchen, above the ceiling, you got these big water tanks, the water heaters. If you're buying a really old property, you might have, I don't know, 10 water heaters throughout the property. You could very quickly, as a contractor, show a 25,000 dirham saving, saving reduction by just not replacing those water heaters, But actually, they're gross, man. Yeah, they're gross. And the longevity of these, you could put a brand new water heater in tomorrow and within 18 months it's leaking again. The water is just so corrosive, harsh, whatever the word is. So it's, dude, man, it's just a minefield. It's like, it's really hard staying on top of everything that needs to be staying on top in order just to get a nice, seamless project, because you've got to be there.
Yeah.
Even using the large oil that's 50 kilometers away, using that as an example, we had it. It must have been about a year ago, where the client signed off on a US branded couple. And what was important for this client was that this was a carbon neutral carpet. So it was part of their ESG and all the rest of it. So anyway, they decided, the contractor decided they were going to install Saturday night through Sunday, and it was going to be done by Monday. No, Saturday. They said Saturday daytime. So we arrive Saturday, waiting for the boxes to arrive. Boxes don't arrive. As we go, the boxes arrive. So, come Monday, everything is now installed. And we're looking at the carpet and like, this feels very, very low pile and thin for this brand. And it looked the same. Very, very similar. It was very similar. And I was just like, this doesn't feel right. So I said, have you got the any boxes left over? Have you got the additional stock? If you need to pull a couple of no, we don't. No, it was the perfect demand. No way. No way. So but they print on the back of all of the tiles. So we pulled up one of the tiles and it was just changed right. There wasn't even a brand on there. And I was like, oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. So called the owner of the company. I was like, I don't know if you know this, but that's the client paid for X. Y is being delivered. It is a far inferior product. And I know for a fact this isn't going to meet the ESG refinements for this to be a platinum Le Lupin project. Of course, oh, what, really? No way. Oh, that must be, let me get onto it. And it took around about 2 weeks then to replace the flooring. But these are the things that, they drive me bananas, because it's very switch and baity, and, call a spade a spade. It is deceitful.
Yeah.
Or some people know, sat in that meeting, if they sign this, and sign this, I know that I've got comparable products to look 99% to say that are a fraction of the price. So it's a way that they can, beef up their margins.
But that's, yeah, it's deceitful.
It is. It's annoying, mate.
Yeah, it's very annoying. But this is, I suppose, the problem is that, again, for example, I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And so many people wouldn't, and think, yeah, I got what I paid for. Especially when it comes to things like that, where there is an accreditation attached to that. And it's not just about the fact that, it is not what was purchased. There's knock-on effects of that. Yeah. And I suppose that's really, I know you mentioned it, project management, but I kind of want to go a little bit deeper into project management in terms of all of the prep work that can happen. Or not that can, but that does happen, what a project manager does. And they touched on it, but just to go into a bit more detail as to how much value a project manager adds to this, because of course it'll come back to, well, how much is it going to cost me?
Yeah.
Is it going to cost me more? I don't have that budget. But what are the benefits of having a project manager involved in your project if it's of a certain size or complexity? And it comes back to this idea again of, well, I could do that. I'm going to be here anyway. I'm pretty switched on. I'm pretty sure I can manage this project. I just need to be on site, watch them, make sure they're not doing anything that they're not supposed to be doing. But I don't know what they're not supposed to be doing. So I could be literally stood there watching it thinking, yeah, that looks legit.
Yeah.
This idea of project management and having somebody on your side of the table, as it were, can you just expand on it in terms of what does a project manager do for you, and how much value do they add to the mix?
So, first of all, any good project manager should save you more than they actually cost you. So that's that's our NO. It's like, right, okay, what would the fees be on this project? Our fees would be 100,000 dirhams or 150,000 if it's 5-6 months. Okay, let me have a look at the landscape of this particular project or the profile of this particular project. Do I believe, and is there data historically that suggests that I can save at least that? Because then we'll put pen to paper and we will say, we guarantee that we're going to save you more money than you actually cost you, or you keep the difference. So now we've completely de-risked the client. So number one, set it, but bring in the right contractors to the table. That is super important. There's a lot of chances, a lot of fly-by-night. We get them walking in here, knocking the door. They talk a good game, glossy brochure. You're like, oh yeah, oh great, okay. How long's the company been going? Oh, I've been here 15 years. Okay, you've been here 15 years. How long's the company been going? Oh, 6 months. Okay, sorry, buddy. Come back when you're 3 years old. That type of thing. So making sure that the contractors that are coming to the table are capable, able, and experienced to deliver what the project needs with whatever the parameters of the projects are. So that's number one. Number two, making sure that there is a very clearly defined scope of works. So when I say scope of works, it's first of all, what is required of the renovation. So if it's a villa, for example, making sure that we do include things like windows, doors, extension, patio, astroturf or real turf, fiberglass pool, or if you put pool, what type of pool is it? What's the size? So making sure that literally it's a very, very detailed scope of work, even the technical aspects as well. So for example, if you wanted triple glazed, okay, triple glazed is good, but actually, is there a dB or a thermal value that you need associated to that particular piece of glazing? Make sure that's actually recorded in there as well. So making sure that there is a scope of works, making sure that at the very least there is a cohesive and relatively comprehensive design brief with accompanying images. Ideally, there would be 3Ds and all the rest of it to go with it. And also, if possible, depending on how quick we go, a detailed BOQ. Now, a detailed BOQ does require materials, does require the CAD files. It does require ideally designs, does require shop drawings. So a detailed BOQ is going to be unlikely if we're trying to push through a design bid proposal. But they would then the PM would then draft the RFP, which essentially are the rules of engagement. It's like, this is the client, this is the project, this is what you're agreeing to if you want to bid for this project. Then obviously all of the proposals come back in. You then need someone to go through each one of these proposals with a fine-tooth comb, cross-check it against the scope of works and any specification or technical requirements. Make sure that there are the least amount of provisional sums as possible. Ideally, there would be quantities, values, and then a total sum. What a lot of contractors do if they're pushed for time or they're not really too au fait with any particular area of the scope, they would, do one of those, I don't know what that thing is. You know what I mean? Yeah, or all of these included, it would be PS or LS, but PS, and then they just put a balloon. You're like, oh, that looks like a disaster waiting to happen. But, and then making sure that we get the brands, we get the model numbers if they've been specified, and just checking the all-round comprehensiveness. I think that's a word. Yeah, word. I'm going to roll with it. Just checking the all-round comprehensiveness, making sure that they had genuinely thought everything through. And then making recommendations to the client. It's like, actually, the other cool thing that the PM should do, which is actually more a favor to the contractor than anyone else, if there are any typos in the BOQ. So instead of 100 square meters, they put 10. Call the contractor and just say, listen, buddy, unless you're willing to do this, you might want to change this, and change this, and send it back. So it's ideally getting it as close to apples as you can, but then identifying areas for negotiation, either because the unit rate is too high, or that there are generally better price alternative products. So the BOQ might come in at 2 million, but after we've been through it, they're like, well, hang on, wait there. This is 15% above market average. This is 25% above market average. And these 5 products, I know that there are better alternatives out there. Just that exercise on its own often will save around about 10% of the project.
Yeah.
And then helping the clients negotiate with the contractor, or we can do it for them. It's like, okay, Mr. Client, I need you to be on the call, or I need you to be present in the meeting. This is what I'm going to go through. This is the number we're targeting. And these are the payment terms. Because payment terms are, another thing. A lot of contractors, they really want 50% upfront. And you're like, in what world do you really, like if it's a fast track project and the payment terms with the client are, pretty tough, 50% can be acceptable with a check guarantee, but usually 25%. And also I want to show me what you're paying. Can I show me how you're spending that?
And perhaps even more so with the luxury end of the market, where in some cases people say, no, I want that brand. Yeah, I'm expecting that brand, and it may need to be imported from Italy. It's going to take that long, but that's what I want in there. So I don't, in any circumstance, want to be one of those clients that comes in and starts, hang on a minute, what's this?
Yeah.
This is not solid marble. This looks like, it's an alternative that is cheaper.
From a lab. Yeah. It does happen.
Yeah.
It does happen.
So I suppose that's where the real value of the PM comes in, to say, look, the expectations are set correctly on both sides of the tapes for the client and then also the contractor, so that everyone's
Motivated.
yeah, on the same page, and there's a transparency.
Yeah.
I suppose is the word, but especially in the renovation contracting business, there's a perception, as you said right at the beginning, but there is a transparency in that. If I'm engaging with a contractor, how is he trying to do no in this situation? Something here is going to be, I'm not really that baby. Yeah, absolutely. And why should it be that way? It doesn't need to be that way. And that clear communication, expectation setting in the beginning, hopefully leads us to the end of a project where if a PM's been involved, the client's, everything's done. And you've been in this situation a few times. Is there a way to describe it when you're at that handover stage? Everything's done, the project is signed off, as it were, and the client walks in. Yeah. That reaction.
Yeah, exhaustion. So, because you've got the pre-construction, everything that I mentioned earlier, setting this up so that you've got the best possible chance of de-risking the project. But there are still risks, because, when the starter pistol fires and the client is appointed that contractor, payments be made, you then need to make sure that the contractor is sticking to their program, that the technical drawings are being drafted and they submitted within the week that they said they were going to. They're handling any rejections or comments as quickly as possible, mobilizing as quickly as possible. When they're on site, as materials arrive, check it to make sure that those are the materials that were ordered and paid for. As things are being installed, making sure that health and safety is spot on, making sure that they're installing as per best practice. It's genuinely exhausting, because a lot of the time, look at the speed at which the fit out and renovation industry has expanded here. Yeah. You're getting people that are fresh off the boat. Some of them are great, most of them aren't. Even though stuff is, you're like, right, you're doing a bad job, but you're great. You come here to teach these guys how to do drywalling. Teach these guys how to paint. But work with them. They're not my responsibility. They're yours. You work at the same company and you're a C game, So it's making sure that also as we are nearing, so like with the procurement schedule, right, okay, well, this week we know that we need to order A, B, and C. Next week we need to order E and F. And then check in with the contractor. Have you ordered these? Oh, no, I haven't. Bloody order.
Do it.
Yeah, like we're going to be late. What about the furniture? And it's because you got furniture, you got NEV, HVAC, firefighting, fit out, and IT. And IT, it also includes security and AV. So on one project, you could be dealing with potentially 5 or 6 different companies all working to this one program.
Yeah.
So what does the project manager do? Frees up the client to never have to come to site. Like if you've got a good PM, the PM has already paid for himself during the tender process anyway, or herself. And during the build, don't even bother dusting your shoes. Go to work. Yeah. Look at raise the kids, whatever it is. Come back on the 14th of December. We'll cut the ribbon. We'll take a photo. I'll take a week off. and you can move it. Yeah, very happy. Yeah, and that's what a good PM should do.
Yeah.
We don't always get it right. There are things that do slip through the night, through the net, but it's what you do in response to that.
Yeah.
We can see that there are delays quite frequently. Do we tell the client? Only if we can't fix it.
Yeah.
And again, that's another big role for the PM.
The PM. Yeah. And I think that is a big part of what we talk about, is that removing that headache from the client and not sharing everything with them when there's a solution that negates them. They need to know that there was ever a problem.
Yeah.
And then that's a big one. I think that the PMs, like I say, the unsung heroes of this sometimes, because it is a lot of work. It is exhausting. And they're often, they're at the handover and cutting of the ribbon, thinking, okay, great. The emotional side of it, the client side, this is beautiful. This is exactly what I wanted. This is fantastic. And you've got the PM at the moment going, phew. Yeah. That's me done. Which means usually they've done a good job. Yeah, they have been full on that you're doing. That's how it is. But hopefully that's giving people an insight into the process, whether it's a luxury Dubai villa or it's an office or whatever. Have we missed anything else? Is there anything else within that stages that we've kind of skipped over or we should be talking about?
Also, engage with the PM as early as possible.
Okay.
Because as soon as you start or clients start speaking to contractors will try and steer client away from PMs. Oh, you don't need a PM. We better PM. Yeah. He should saw you. He has your interest at heart. If you tell him to not tell the truth to the client, he's going to not tell the truth because his salary's on the line. So engage with the PM. I know that the team of project people, they normally will invest weeks worth of work to demonstrate, look how much value I can add without you spending a penny.
Yeah.
And then it's like, right, okay, you've now seen the impact that I've had. If we decided that you want to cut this tie, here's everything that you've got to do, So engage with the PM as quickly as possible. Make sure that if you don't, you're carrying out, due diligence on the contractors. The contractors, the Rare platform is full of all sorts of different contractors for different projects, all of which due diligence has been carried out anyway. So I think that's it. Everything we do is de-risk.
Yeah.
De-risk and try and provide is guaranteed outcomes in every instance.
Yeah.
That's why we exist.
Yeah, I think that's a really good reason to exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't do such a bad job if I don't say so myself. Anyway, that's it. Appreciate that, David. Thank you for the insight as always. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode. Please don't forget to subscribe or like wherever you're listening or watching to it. And come back soon. We'll be putting next episodes out in the very near future. Thanks again for listening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.